significance of, I know it on the surface, but you know, in all those mainly Southern Baptist ministries were surrounded Trump and laid hands on him. That was like a coming together of what you're saying, government and religion.
It was a public display of the reality of government and religion being the same. You come here with your Bible, and as one African said, you come in with your Bible and you tell us to close our eyes and pray. And when we close our eyes and pray, when we open them, everything is gone. Your army is taking it. And that's first the Bible, then the army. That has always been the sequence of events. The whole concept of exploitation and imperialism is based on how effective are you in Christianizing people. The moment you become a Christian, you become disconnected from all your property, because now the government from the other country is going to take it. So missionaries are actually the first wave in the nation to overtake it. That's what missionaries are. And they always have been. Because what do missionaries do? Your name is Obutu. And they tell you got to have a Christian name. So now your name is George. Now you're a Christian. So why is it you can't be a Christian with a name like Obutu Muhammad? It's called cultural genocide. That's what happens. And who does that? The missionary does it. The missionary does it, and the army enforces it. And so that's where we are. Now, when they laid hands on Donald Trump, that was an exchange of energy. Yeah. That's exactly what took place. They coronated him as their king. And he has been serving them well. And then him. So,
those are the ones they like the best.
Anyway.
Nick?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like I see an increasing the changes that we want to see happen are more are very much under the table and hidden, as opposed to the more obvious negative, apparently negative things that we see happening. I feel like the group of people who are able to be the most damaging are increasingly isolating themselves unknowingly. And where it talks about in the Bible somewhere about change happening in the blink of an eye or the twinkling of an eye, I think that's the dynamic that we're seeing being set up now, is that when you increasingly isolate yourself, even the people who you thought were your base eventually turn against you. So all the Trump voters who are about to lose their Obamacare next year, or whenever that's supposed to happen, that happens. That type of thing. I just see it being the greater they are, or the more they're able to sort of consolidate their so-called power, or consolidate the source of their control, the greater they make, or the easier they make it for us to get rid of them in sort of one fell swoop, as opposed to having to deal with it for a long time and deal with all the little details and ramifications. So I just think that's when that occurred to me, I just thought that was an interesting way to think about it, because I hadn't really seen it as a exactly how this is supposed to play out. I hadn't really seen it that way before, but increasingly I believe that that's what is happening. That the fact that they're consolidating and isolating is the thing that eventually makes it the most easy for us to throw that energy off of us, if that makes sense. And when we see things like Jen Hatman and the sort of little changes occurring day by day in terms of shifting the mindset of people in general, but in white people specifically, I think it's never gonna, well, it's not gonna be the case where I think there's a huge shift in the viewpoint of most people who think that way, like Christians in particular. But it just has to be enough so that it reaches a point where it triggers the domino. And I think we're still seeing that being set up. And it'll be like 90% of the, to use the domino analogy, 90% of them just have to push one over. And that one is that consolidated sort of vortex of chaotic energy that we sort of see manifested in a lot of these current events, anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I thought that was I believe that's what we're seeing currently. And we'll continue to see these little, we'll continue to see the division increase between people in places of power and the people that they think who are their base, or the people who they think they have control over. And they really will have less and less control over them until it flips, whenever that happens.
I think that consolidation of which you speak will be more apparent in the coming year. Because everything has, so many things, I should say, not everything, but so many things have been exposed. So I think that it will be more apparent in the coming year than it is right now.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, not even just emotionally or spiritually or subconsciously, but you have the benchmarks of the midterm elections. So people have an opportunity, I guess, to express that in a certain organized way, a certain, it's not just a feeling now, you have an opportunity to apply it.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see some of that.
I don't think that we would have to put forth much of an effort, if effort at all, in order for it to be manifest. I think the energy is there to do it. It's just a matter of being in agreement as above, so is below. And the way that agreement takes place, I believe, is when we enter verbal discussions, because that's the way things are below, verbalized. When we recognize it for what they are, then we are in agreement with the source of the energy, which is that which is above, and the consolidation of it, I believe, is taking place even as we speak. It's even with the appearance of a division in terms of government, that in itself is indicative of the division in humanity in terms of how it has chosen to be manipulative. I see both of them being altered at the same time. I don't see a difference in manipulation from, and I use this for context, I don't see a difference in manipulation from the Democrat to the Republican. The only, I should say the only difference I do see is the method of manipulation, but both are manipulative. So there is a consolidation of both of them, in that you don't get much pushback from the Democrats when the Republicans do things, as you do from the Republicans when the Democrats do things. So both of them are manipulative in that regard. And I believe that we're going to see more and more of the unicity of those two entities in the coming year. I do believe that. I believe that very, very strongly. That we're going to see a greater manifestation of that. And one of the reasons I say that is because of what some of us, I think, missed. I know I did at the beginning, with what they were trying to do with Chidonna Brazile, when they said that she was doing a tell-all to make money, and when you really look at what she said, what she was dealing with, all she was saying was, there's no different than Democrats and Republicans when it comes to African. That's all she was saying. Both of them are the same. When she says that in one of the communities in Miami, they were asking for $75,000 to do a get out the vote drive, and they wouldn't even give them that. And it was money that she had raised for the DNC, but the Clinton faction would not give it. And they sent no money into the black community at all, because they took for granted they had the black vote. So she was saying that there's no difference in the two. That's all. So, and I'm saying that she's exactly right. So and again, here we are, we talked about racism, when in actuality is ideology. It is two forms of the same ideology. And it is an ideology of degradation based upon race and economics. And it is justified by religion. It's just that simple.
I see that a lot, and I hadn't thought about this before, but that's what you just said. The degradation of based on ideology and economics and religion. But I really see that with Roy Moore, because his manipulation of women, plus his use of Christianity to do that. But I see him as the type of person who would have really had control over in the previous generation. He would have had economic power, ideological and economic power over these black women, and then put Christianity on top of that to consolidate his own power. But these women have risen above all that.
Yes.
Which is like powerful.
And there is no power without religion. None.
Without religion?
Without religion. Religion is what keeps the oppressed docile. So religion is the point of the spirit when it comes to that power.
Well, but you can't, I don't think, maintain military dominance forever. You've got to find a way. And religion is the opportunity. And we could just argue, there was a wonderful series that BBC made 2 decades ago. You can actually still find it on Google, called The Bible and the Gun. Exactly what you're talking about. And it was applied to the British colonialism coming into Africa. the one justified and supported the other. And you can see the same thing, pick your continent, pick your former colonialism here in the United States.
Yeah.
But just how the two, the one was necessary for the other.
Absolutely. Oh, you cannot have one without the other.
But my point was that sooner or later, you just couldn't do it with the gun. You had to come in with religion, which is the ultimate, understanding of things, explainer of things. And we had the same problem here in the United States. I think I mentioned the book about religion and Christianity and race in the United States, and how the difference between the Protestants and the Catholics and everybody else was the same as the difference between the North and the South. Blacks were still lesser human beings. The old question was, but how should they be treated? Same with Africa. They're still lesser human beings, but you kill them or you convert them. So
I'm trying to think.
but great. I mean, my sense is what intrigues me is that if you go back and use terms like tribal and cultural, they pale in a way under the notion of race as a concept. They become very local. You know what I'm trying to say? One tribe versus another. But if it's race, it
Yeah.
becomes universal.
Yeah.
So what do you need to make race? You need science, right? Which is supposed to be objective, unemotional, etc. So that's why you had all this eugenics or whatever that stuff is. You can measure skull sizes and everything else.
Well, I agree. Like science, well, the methodology that science is supposed to be based on can be helpful, but it's always, you always bring a certain psychological bias to whatever you're.
No, I'm not arguing with that, but I'm saying for decades, that's not what people understood. Science was cold and objective. The experiments had to be replicated. Then along came subatomic physics that said, wait, the outcome is influenced by the observer. So nobody took that out of science and put that in a philosophical argument, which is bias and the influence of bias on reality, creating reality. I'm just saying in our lifetime we've seen the rise of science and all that it's supposed to be, and then we've seen the cracks.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, but
it doesn't matter if you're talking about you're talking about particles or you're talking about the social sciences, psychology, etc. It's the same.
Yeah.
There's the same possibility of distortion, perversion, whatever you want to call it, manipulation for purpose.
Yeah.
So,
my point was the concept of race as it's employed for the purpose of dividing and conquering is it's just like you said, yeah, like it's universal, and I think that as a mentality doesn't enter into our sort of collective awareness until we've reached the point where we have the potential to become universal. Humanity itself has the ability to reawaken to its spiritual and non-physical and cosmic nature. And I was just thinking about the concept of race is something that I think enters into the sort of consciousness of human beings as they develop at a certain point in their development, in order to, as a result of all different kinds of things. But the opportunity it presents is to defeat that sort of thing holding us back from truly becoming the sort of non-physical, cosmic, spiritual beings that we are. It's like what was my point? My point was like the very concept of race as it's employed is like a new phenomenon, in that it's designed to it only shows up right near the end or right near the beginning, and I believe is specifically designed to impede spiritual progress. And it, like we talked about this before, like one of the final things preventing that happening, spiritual progress, that is racism. It's pure. I forget where I read it. I read it a while ago, but it was a description, I think it was a Jewish commenter who was reading either the Torah or the something to do with Kabbalah, but it was a description of what evil or chaos is the absolute sort of drive to make 1 + 1 = 3 for just the purpose of doing that. There was no purpose outside of itself other than, I don't know, enjoying the process of creating chaos or whatever. And that's what racism is, to me anyway, in terms of how it affects our growth, how it affects humanity's ability to reintegrate. It's pure nonsensical, not even based in science in its ideal form. It's not based in reality of any kind. It's just the pure drive to make 1 + 1 = 3. It's the pure unwillingness to engage reality in order to maintain your confused sense of identity. It's like a cosmic blockage that has to be overcome before any civilization, I believe, can sort of reintegrate itself to the point where it thinks on a group level as opposed to just an individual level. And then as a result of thinking on a group level, being able to affect our shared reality in ways that we can't on a purely individual level. And I see that being something that's what's being sort of set up underneath the table or in the background behind all these weird political and social things that we're going through. It's that the source of that blockage, or the source of that mentality that uses racism or racism itself, wherever that comes from, and wherever that inserts itself into our collective awareness from, is being set up as that thing that we will flip or push off of us in the blinking or twinkling of an eye. And I don't know exactly where it comes from. And I'm talking about, that sort of stubborn unwillingness to engage reality. I don't know exactly where that comes from. I don't know where it goes to once we get rid of it, but I think that energy is a real, not threat, but it certainly has the potential to be threatening in terms of its ability to impede our spiritual growth and reset the clock on everything that we've been trying to do. But currently, I think it presents the biggest opportunity, and I think that's how it is going to be used as an opportunity. for humanity, and us in this room, as we recognize it as such, is going to be used as an opportunity to catapult us to the next sort of phase or stage of our understanding of self as a whole. And then that will affect our shared reality in a number of ways, I think. But there's something about all of this that I see that I'm trying to verbalize, and it's very much related to the sort of spiritual source of racism and where it comes from. Anyway, I think what we see when people like Jen Hatmaker are standing up against the unwillingness of males in particular to address the injustice done towards femininity. It's the same source, because racism and misogyny are the same thing. It's just the whatever's, they just use whatever is convenient. Like it's how those alt-right, quote unquote alt-right women who are part of the alt-right movement don't understand why there's so much misogyny in white supremacy as there is racism. Like, I was reading something a week or so ago about a woman who identified as a sort of ethno-nationalist.
What?
And she didn't understand. Oh, is that a question?
You have to explain ethno-nationalist.
Oh, white supremacist, basically. Someone who thinks there should be a white homeland.
Oh, okay.
Or that all people should be nice and separate, whatever, that same, that. And she couldn't understand why there was so much, she experienced so much, like, hate coming from her fellow ethno-nationalists who were male. And I was like, yeah, that's it, because people don't understand what this is. It has nothing, race is color is the convenient excuse. If everybody was white, they would just find another way to create hierarchy and oppress, whatever. Because the essence of what racism is not anything other than that sort of chaotic drive to dominate and to oppose reality and maintain and conserve your own foolishness. But I think, just to sort of tie it to what I said earlier, that's how people who buy into that isolate themselves. And that's what makes it ultimately, I believe, easier for us to let go of their influence.
But don't we live on the lifestyle of avoidance? And the thing that we avoid is reality. And we avoid, because we avoid reality, we never realize who we really are in terms of spirituality. And what I mean by a lifestyle of avoidance, we create all of these illusions about what joy and peace and prosperity and all this stuff is. Example is that, tell me one holiday that we celebrate that's based in reality. One holiday that's based in reality. Yeah,
I was thinking too. That's a lie too.
No, that's how we used it. But that isn't.
Well, Abraham Lincoln made the national holiday in 1863. But
even Martin Luther King's birthday is.
What's based in reality?
That's weird.
No holidays are based in reality. None. Yet, we look forward to these holidays. And we celebrate them as if they are real. Even our birthday is not based in reality. Because are we really, when we talk about our birthday, is it really something to celebrate? The birth of into this chaotic, whatever. So if everything that we hold dear is not based in reality, then we don't know what reality is. Nothing is based in reality. In this, as long as we maintain earth consciousness and everything is geared toward this dimension, we will never experience reality. And when you don't experience reality, it is easier for you to accept what is real, what you think is real, from someone who dominates you. And if you don't accept it, you're forced to accept it. And then what happens? The next two generations thinks it's real. And because when you, every holiday is a made-up holiday. Christmas is made up. Ain't nothing. Jesus would have had pneumonia if he had been born at Christmas. That's crazy. There's no such thing as this. Now, it's just not real. Even New Year's is not real. Because it's a made-up thing. Because the 21st should be the first to come to the next year in terms of the month of solstice. You see what I'm talking about? Really, I guarantee you, 99% of the people don't know what the 21st of December is, other than beginning winter, but they have no clue about what the winter solstice.
Oh, with the light.
Yes. Right. That's what I'm talking. And the winter solstice is a reality. But we have no clue as to what it means. That's what I'm talking about. So how do we engage these illusions to the extent that not only are they exposed, but we can also at the same time expose what reality really is? How do you do that? Get upset with you. Why? Because a lot of people are in denial. I think you do it individually. That's where it starts. That you recognize who you are.
Yeah, I think, or if you're lucky, well, and then maybe you have at an early time in your life, probably, but not always, that one soul in your life who, your grandmother kind of thing or whatever, who talks to you in a way, encourages you in a way, tells you not to be afraid to question things or whatever it is, that little reinforcement, that seed, and that's how you maybe have a chance to start to question and break out of that conformity, if you want to call it that, right? But without those teachers, or whatever that word should be, yeah, it's. I think in my own case, I don't know why I'm the way I am happy, right? Although there were just opportunities, experiences, and sometimes, even if not for a long period of time, individuals that came through my life or vice versa. And so I just saw things. It's not that I saw things differently. Maybe I'd like to think that it gave me just enough, even if I still was stupid. I was stupid in a better way.
Smart. The informed is stupid.
I don't need to be smart. I don't need to be right. Okay? But I don't want to be closed in my thinking. Right? That's why I told you, I'm going to finally say it with my last breath. Now I get it. It is all nothing. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Finally let go of everything and then hopefully have one instance where everything else can come in and fill it up. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my eternity in the lower 1/3 of the chakras. But anyway, if that's the way it's supposed to be, that's the way it's supposed to be. But I think that's why we say over and over again. I think that's part of Audrey's frustration with teaching. We don't create atmospheres that encourage. Anyway, so it is harder. And then maybe you live in a community where you thought you were the only one, and then you find out one day you're not. So,
Teaching you back in the job. I learned. That's where it's helped.
I think what Nick was talking about as far as Trump isolating his base and what is definitely dominating the media in terms of misogynistic behavior, forces put people in a position and forces them to look within themselves and judge themselves based upon something that was so close to what they thought their identity was, and they never ever took the time to investigate it. So it now brings up all of these questions of why do I feel this way, or who am I, etc. And for the first time, people are willing to even change because they don't like how they look or they don't want to be that. Whereas before we were talking about living outside of reality, something that was easily just accepted. That now it's like you can accept this, but you're going to have to fight to accept it because now it's going to be very uncomfortable, which is the same exact thing. It's parallel to the same thing in how all of us ended up here. I just think on a wide scale, people are forced to deal with that. So I see that as the individual change, not only with just them, but of course with ourselves as well.
I'm sitting at your top.
That was an interesting observation you made for what I just
I was
said.
going to say the same thing.
That actually, I think that
that's the part that counted.
until the end, until I as an individual embrace the concept of not knowing what reality is, and have embark on the journey to find self, or realize what self actually means. Until then, I have not become a conscious conduit of the type of energy that's necessary to expose what reality is. And I think that when you understand it, that's why we hear that journey of search for self is what actually brought all of us to a place. And in searching for self, we found out that everyone we came in contact with at this point is self. And then it begins to expand from that. And as far as reality is concerned, I don't think we have a clue. I really don't think we have a clue as to what it is, or looks like, or should look like. It's because we're still searching for some concrete, non-visible image of self, of what self is. Understanding that I'm not talking about change, I'm just talking about self as a whole. There's things sitting in the text that she asked me a question. I could text before answer a question all the time, but this kind of started. She asked me, was Jesus born Christ? Was he born Christ? And I said, my response was, yes, he was, and so were you. And of course, her response was, why is it that nothing in my life changed? And my response was, because you don't know what it means to be God. So even if it change, you wouldn't recognize it. So how would I learn to be that? You have to have someone who understands what it means to teach you. the point of leading her down that road was to force her to question what this thing about the Christ actually means. But at the same time, hopefully push her to see that all of us are the power to do what we were created to do, which is what Christ is all about. And hopefully at some point she will embrace the realness of all of that in terms of who she was created to be. And embracing that, I have to embrace if she embraces who she was created to be, she has no choice but to embrace who you were created to be. Because all of us were created to be. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but it becomes easier as we begin to let go of these things that we were taught are reality. And in every sense of the word, move beyond it, not only in our thinking, but also in our relationship with each other.
Something else you made me think of, racism, religion, and government are all systemically tied with one another and intertwined. So the thing that is taking place is people that faith in any of these all this time have had also faith in those other two, whether it's knowingly or not. Therefore, the questioning of one of them basically being even the government you've had faith in all this time, and all of a sudden you got what you wanted. And with you getting what you wanted, it's still not ending up anything like you thought or hoped for. Now you feel like you've been bamboozled, which also brings up all that questioning. But it just doesn't question one, you have to question all of those things. Even if you're questioning them and you don't realize that I'm questioning the thing that is actually taking place.
But you know, I find, Sheldon, that it's easier to question all those things if you start questioning religion first. And if you start questioning government first, it becomes difficult to question religion. So religion is the most difficult thing to come face to face with as being a non-reality. What happens when you say that? The first thing comes to mind is you don't believe that there's a God, or you don't believe that there's an entity greater than you. And that is purposely, the non-belief is purposely conflated with the idea of the non-reality, that religion is not a reality, in order to make you uncomfortable and make you think it's unsafe. I mean, how uncomfortable was it the first time that we began talking about Jesus being there? How uncomfortable was it, to embrace that? That it didn't feel real good because, not because it wasn't true, but because we had to come to grips with having been taught that and why. Why were you taught that? Why did you embrace it? Why did you question it before? What was wrong? What would be wrong with him, being married? What would be wrong with him having a child? Those things are the things that help us to become more comfortable with that, which means that we begin to move away from, detach from this false sense of reality of reality. And the religion start. Everything else is easy once you deal with that. And I think the reason for that maybe is because religion deals with the soul, it deals with the spiritual essence. It actually gives us a false sense of the unseen spiritual, wherein government's the thing that's seen. You see the results of economics, but religion is different in itself, which says to me that is the reason it is the most powerful. And that is the reason it is able not only to keep you in bondage, but also it is able, it is so powerful until it will cause you to fight to stay in bondage. Religion will do that. And the government doesn't necessarily do that.
I think government tells you what to do. Religion tells you who you are.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Your identity is tied to that religious thing.
That's why the military can be so. It's a similar thing with people who are in the military. They will fight for patriotism. They will fight for a lie, and it's. I mean, I feel like their desires are honest and good, but they end up being manipulated in the same way that people in religion are manipulated.
Yeah. Fight them doesn't want to fight them here until you go there and find out you're wrong. I've met so many people change once they got there and get back. But this is something else you also find, that most of the people in the military, especially in special ops, are people who come from small towns or from the south. Most of them. Most of them. You can find, you don't find how progressive in special ops.
I mean, it's easier to instill the same thing that racism does, is the same thing to instill in our soldiers, as in the me against them mentality.
Yeah, it's a form of racism. You know, it's our culture against that culture.
Yeah.
And we must make sure that we maintain dominance over that culture.
Absolutely. And that's, it's subliminal. It tells you how powerful you are because you are more capable of killing someone than they are you. That's the subliminal effect of that power, is being able to kill someone.
And
And
also
have no
realize
remorse.
what they're saying power is as well, is the ability to kill someone also.
Yeah. But that's what it teaches. So, when that happens, what are you doing? You're doing it based upon government. But if you have a mix of religion in it,
It's potent.
radical Islamic terrorists are what we're fighting because Christ is the only one, is the only way. Now you got something very, very powerful. And it's extremely difficult to deprogram someone who has such an affinity for both of those things. Very, very difficult. That's what we're up against. That's what we're dealing with, actually.
We haven't talked a whole lot about gun culture, and I feel like that is wrapped up in gun culture,
Most
religion,
definitely.
and government. I don't know. I feel like that's worth unraveling at some point. I don't know if we'll do that today.
Well,
Time, but
we won't, because we get ready to leave in a few moments. So, we won't be able to do that. However, I think it is worthy of unraveling because it is a major part of what we're doing. It really is.
It's also a misplaced concept of power too.
Yes. And we could get into a lot of areas when you feel like that you have to have a gun to have power. We can use a lot of areas.
And the implications of what you think of yourself as well
Yes.
is more important.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Either consciously or subconsciously of what you think about yourself. Yeah. So anyway, unless if there are no more questions or comments, we're going to leave. I guess we're going to Lorraine. For Builders Mall. Session. No questions, no comments? Okay. Tell the wrong people we're gone.